for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Levelling up. What does it mean? A vacuous political slogan or genuine transformation for people's lives? Today, we explore that question on The Briefing, combined with the latest in Ukraine. Britain sending tanks, but will Germany follow? All that to come after the headlines.
Good morning, it's just gone 9:30. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The government's announced more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK through a Levelling Up Fund. The Prime Minister's promise to deliver economic growth and new jobs. £19 million of the latest round of funding will be going to Rishi Sunak's own constituency. The Eden Project North in Morecambe will receive £50 million, as will Cardiff Crossrail. Labour's criticised the plan, saying London and South East England will receive most of the money. But Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove says they're wrong.
The way in which the money is allocated is against objective criteria. So we set out our determination to make sure that people in those overlooked communities get support. Then the allocation is scrutinised by experts in government departments in order to make sure that it's rigorous. But as I say, you know, the biggest investment of all is in Morecambe, and across Lancashire, we're seeing investment, including in communities like Blackburn and Accrington that I mentioned, and that is a deliberate way in which this government is doing more to support these communities.
Health leaders are making contingency plans for what could be the biggest walkout in the history of the NHS next month. It was announced yesterday that ambulance workers will join nurses in a combined day of action for the first time ever on February the 6th. Nurses in England from 55 NHS trusts are today staging a second day of strike action, while more than 1,000 Unite members in the Welsh Ambulance Service are holding the first of two 24-hour walkouts. Jacinda Ardern is quitting as Prime Minister of New Zealand next month, saying she no longer has enough in the tank to lead the country. Ms Ardern admitted it had been a tough 5.5 years in the job. She'll step down as Labour Party leader by the 7th of February, with a vote to determine her replacement shortly after. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News Now. It's back to the briefing with Tom.
Very good morning to you. It's 9:33 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. Now, first this morning, it would be remiss to not acknowledge the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Jacinda Ardern has announced her resignation. This after a 5.5 year at the helm. She'll step down as Labour Party leader no later than the 7th of February. Here's a little snippet of what she had to say.
The only interesting angle that you will find is that after going on 6 years of some big challenges, I am human. Politicians are human. We give all that we can for as long as we can, and then it's time.
And then it's time. Well, Jacinda says that there is not enough left in her tank to carry on, but is there something else behind what's going on in New Zealand? Jacinda Ardern, of course, have won 2 election victories, a minority in 2017, and then a rare majority in 2020 at the height of the COVID pandemic. But what's happened since then, since her historically high popularity? Let's take a look at the polls in New Zealand. Jacinda Ardern, of course, was riding high at almost 50% just at the start of 2021. But since that point, her Labour Party has been sliding down and down. One poll recently put it down at 25%, half the level of support that she received just over a year ago. Meanwhile, New Zealand's National Party, their version of the Conservative Party, has been riding higher and higher. Could this be something to do with Jacinda Ardern's resignation? Well, she hasn't acknowledged it, but it certainly seems likely. It'll be interesting to see whether the Labour Party can indeed turn around their position in the polls in the coming days. Just a week to pick a new leader, but at a time when excess deaths are running high in New Zealand, the country is teetering on the brink of recession, much as with the situation in many other developed worlds. Incumbents may not do particularly well. Their election is in just around 10 months' time. One to keep an eye on, no doubt. But next today, let's turn from New Zealand to another country where Ukraine has been back in the news. It never really has gone away because, of course, what we have seen in the last few days is Britain make a fairly monumental announcement. We're sending tanks to Ukraine for the first time. The idea behind this, of course, is to try and chivvy on, particularly Germany, to release its tanks to be able to help the Ukrainian cause. Is this particularly likely? And what's the state of play in the war? Well, Keir Giles is a senior fellow in the Russia and Eurasia programme at Chatham House, and I'm delighted to say he joins us now. Thank you for being with us this morning, Keir. I suppose, first of all, we haven't heard much in terms of the military moving within Ukraine. Have we entered sort of a stalemate situation?
Well, that's exactly right. That is the concern, that after the dramatic advances that Ukrainian forces made over the autumn, things are now getting bogged down. And of course, the longer this war drags on, the more it favors Russia. It gives Russia time to bring into play these hundreds of thousands of men that it's mobilized, with another mobilization wave expected across Russia soon. So the tanks that are being demanded by most Western supporters to be delivered to Ukraine are actually intended to break this deadlock and to ensure that Ukraine can again push forward in the spring and preempt any Russian offensive. And as you said, it is Germany that is the block on this. Germany not only refusing to supply its own Leopard 2 advanced tanks to Ukraine, but also putting a block on other users of the same model across Europe. So this announcement that we've had from the UK now that they'll be sending Challenger 2s is symbolic, and it's one of the many steps that Western countries have taken to try to demolish Germany's excuses for not helping.
It's interesting to see how Britain is seen in Ukraine. I've just seen reports within the last hour. Boris Johnson has been in Kiev. He's been given an honorary citizenship of Kiev by Vitaly Klitschko, the mayor of Kiev. And he said these words this morning. This is Boris Johnson speaking. I say focus on Ukraine and not Putin. Putin is not going to use nuclear weapons. What we must do is support Zelensky and Ukraine. Give them tanks. There is nothing to be lost. Keir Giles, as an expert in Russia, do you agree with that assessment from Boris Johnson, that there is no way that Russia will use nuclear weapons?
The way people are describing it who have looked closely at the possibility is a non-zero chance. In other words, it's not completely impossible to rule out the last action of a madman in the Kremlin, but there's a big difference between what Russia wants us to think about when it would use nuclear weapons and when it actually would. And the problem is, for a long time, people have been confusing Russia's nuclear rhetoric and bravado and intimidation with what Russia actually thinks about when you can use nuclear weapons. The problem is that has put a huge break on supporters of Ukraine, not just Germany, but also the United States, providing the support that Ukraine actually needs as the front line of this war between Russia and the West. And it's meant that they are deterring themselves from actually providing what's needed to end the war because they have this fear that has been stoked by Russia of some kind of nuclear incident.
Now, clearly the United Kingdom's decision to send tanks isn't going to shift things by ourselves, but what the government seems to be intending to do is nudge other countries to follow suit. Britain sort of being the spearhead here, where more can follow afterwards. Do you think it will change the assessments, particularly in Berlin, where Chancellor Scholz has been very reticent to send extra support?
It's a step in a process. It's not the first one, and Chancellor Scholz has made it clear it's now not going to be the last one, because as Western countries demolish all of these excuses that Germany is putting forward for not doing the right thing, Germany comes up with more. Now that Western tanks have been supplied, so Germany no longer has the excuse that it doesn't want to be the only country supplying Western tanks, they're saying, no, they have to be American. And that's just the latest in a long phase of new excuses that Germany is coming up with. So the situation at the moment is Germany's demanding that the US does the same. And all of this is likely to be decided at a meeting of the donor countries supporting Ukraine that's happening tomorrow in Germany, where you would hope behind closed doors there is going to be some kind of showdown between the rest of the West and Germany, trying to get Germany finally to do the right thing and unlock all of this support that Ukraine so desperately needs.
Really, really interesting stuff, particularly where Germany is and might well be going. One to keep a very close eye on. But for now, Keir Giles, Senior Fellow at the Russia and Eurasia programme at Chatham House, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your analysis there. Next this morning, last night, over £2 billion in levelling up funding was awarded to more than 100 projects across the country. Now, the aim of this second round of levelling up cash is to bolster growth and boost employment. The Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, said, "We're firing the starting gun on more than 100 transformational projects in every corner of the UK that will revitalise communities that have historically been overlooked but are bursting with potential." Well, one of those projects, set to receive £50 million, is the Eden Project North in Morecambe. And I'm delighted to be joined now by the Member of Parliament for Morecambe and Lonsdale, David Morris. David, you must be very pleased with this £50 million news. What exactly is Eden Project North?
Well, the Eden Project North it's a different concept from the one in Cornwall. It's the same brand, it's the same team that are doing it, and they're coming to Morecambe, and it's going to be more of a marine ecological park. It's going to be built right on the sea, and it's also going to be built in the centre of the town. It's going to completely regenerate Morecambe. We had a link road here about 10 years ago where I secured £120 million to be the quickest seaside link, shall we say, from the M6 motorway than anywhere in the country. And that's what brought the Eden project here. So this 50 million is a 10-year project for myself and the Eden project, you know, to get it to this point where we've got the money, and it's fantastic. It's the biggest levelling up award, I believe, certainly in the north of England, but it's going to completely game-change Morecambe.
It's really interesting to see that this is a very substantive project, because some of the criticism about the Levelling Up Fund in general has been it's been a lot smaller, a lot more particular, sort of, you know, sprucing up a town centre here or there. I suppose the argument is that the more projects need to be on the scale of Eden Project North to actually boost growth, and some nice new plant pots here and there in other town centres might not be the best use of money.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, please bear in mind, you know, when I first started talking about this, and we're going back now to 2012, my colleagues thought I was bonkers. It's about, in effect, an ecological park, a bubble, on the seafront, in the middle of a town, in the north of England. You know, it couldn't correlate any sort of description in people's minds in Parliament. But 10 years down the line, you know, I think we've changed as the way society runs. We're very more green aware now. And I think that has had a large part to play into why more has been looked at, because our local educational facilities here, the universities and colleges, even the curriculum at the local schools, have embraced the Green Eden ethos. And we are now training up the future workforce for the Eden projects all around the world, because it's a prestigious international brand. So, you know, we've sort of been ahead of the curve in a lot of respects. So the money that we've got, this 50 million, it's been a long time in the making, but now it's there. And, you know, somebody said to me, £50 million is a lot of money here in Morecambe. And it's a phenomenal, mind-blowing amount. It's only half of what's needed, because Eden themselves are putting 50 million to it, so it's a £100 million ticket. But if that had been down south, say, in, you know, Greater London or even in the southeast.
No, it is good to see that taxpayer funding being matched and indeed exceeded by private sector funding as well. David Morris, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us. And indeed, we could hear in the background there some very happy constituents of yours as well. Seems like it's a nice, busy place in Morecambe this morning. I do apologise for some of the audio quality we had in that last interview. But next this morning, from one government promise to another. Last year, the Blythe-based Britishvolt gigafactory was awarded a game-changing £100 million, conditional, of course, to build an electric battery manufacturing plant. It had been hailed at the time as a breaking ground on the country's green industrial revolution. But the factory now won't be built after the mother company went into administration on Tuesday. Tempers ran high in the chamber of the House of Commons yesterday when the local Labour MP, Ian Lavery, questioned the Prime Minister. Let's listen in.
Would the Prime Minister agree with me that there's not a single project in the country that better demonstrates the government's lack of industrial strategy, failure of levelling up, and abandonment of the North East?
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me say my thoughts are with the company's employees and families at the time, and we stand ready to support those impacted. Now, let me just outline for the Honourable Gentleman what exactly has happened. We did offer significant support to Britishvolt through the Automotive Transformation Fund, considerable amount of funding, but entirely reasonably, and it's not something that I expect the Labour Party to understand, that support was conditional on the company receiving private investment as well, which I think is a sensible protection for taxpayers. Unfortunately, that didn't materialise.
So the Prime Minister there explaining that £100 million in government, or I should say taxpayer funding, was conditional on Britishvolt getting private funding as well. Because it hasn't been able to get that private funding, that taxpayer funding, in fact, is not being spent on the project now. But the question this morning is, what does this mean for the green industrial revolution in the United Kingdom? Is it all over before it really began? Or might there be other companies that could step into the role? Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by our business and economics editor, who is live in Blyth at the Volt factory for us. Liam, what's going on?
Tom, great to join you here from the proud port town of Blyth. We're about 15 miles north of Newcastle here in a particularly sunny but crisp and chilly northeast. This news that Britishvolt has gone into administration has come to a shock to this town. The site where the Britishvolt factory, the gigafactory, the £3.6 billion facility was to be built is just a few miles up the road in Camis, and we'll be moving there later in the day as I talk to people. But I'm delighted to be joined for now by Professor Matt Boyle of the University of Newcastle. He's an engineering electrification specialist. He's also the chair of Driving the Electrical Revolution, which is a local research group linked to government. Matt, you are an electrification specialist, as I said, but just first up, this news yesterday, did it come as a shock?
Not completely, no. It's been a worry for some time that the Britishvolt weren't able to garner all the support they needed. It wasn't a particular shock. But it's not the end. I am confident that this site will be built and we will make batteries in Camis.
Why is Camis such a good place to build this facility? This morning, the Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, said it's a very attractive site, it's a very valuable site, even though Britishvolt, for now, that particular company, couldn't raise the private sector investment that would have unlocked about £100 million of government grants or subsidy for this site. Why is Camis such a good place to build a huge gigafactory building these batteries that go into electric cars?
So the site sits on what was the coal store for the Alcan plant, the Alcan power plant. So there is electrical infrastructure already there. Behind us is Blyth Port, which is a deep water port, one of the few on this side of the country. And it has rail links. Because of the demand for coal that was transported into the site, there's a rail link already established to take batteries out of the site.
And this is also meant to be the heartland of Britain's green industrial revolution, right? We're surrounded by wind, offshore wind. We got Dogger Bank out there in the North Sea, the biggest offshore wind farm in the world, I believe. We've got the internet connector from that coming in here. Another reason why this region should really be at the forefront of the very kind of green projects that you're driving forward.
So we are at the forefront of that. One of the things that we've done in this region is focus on offshore renewable energy, battery technology, hydrogen technology, and the drivetrains for electric vehicles. Because we do have a very large manufacturing facility just south of here in Sunderland at Nissan, which makes 600,000 cars a year, and in a few years' time, all of those will have to be electric.
Now, the North East, as you say, is really at the forefront of British car making these days, along with the Midlands, of course, and the car makers in South Wales. What are the knock-on effects if this plant isn't built? Because you have to build the batteries near where you're building the cars, because the batteries are so heavy, right? So if the batteries aren't being built, you won't be building the cars in this region.
There are two things about the battery manufacture in the UK. One is it increases the amount of local content in a car, which allows us to export the cars without tariffs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there is an enormous demand. There will be an enormous demand for batteries for electric vehicles. 600,000 cars are going to need somewhere around 4 battery plants across the UK. So building these quickly is something we have to do in order to be competitive. If we don't, then we're going to have to import the batteries from elsewhere, which will have knock-on economic effects.
You are a very connected guy in this region. You are Mr. Automotive when it comes to electrification anyway. How hopeful are you that this Camas site will see this huge gigafactory? We've had 350 job losses on yesterday's announcement, but this place could employ thousands.
Yeah, the estimate originally was around 3,000 people in the plant. However, that would increase outside the plant, the supply chain, by probably another 5,000 people. So it is a big plant, and would be a big employer. But I'm supremely confident that something will be built on the Camas site that makes batteries.
And a lot of people watching and listening here on GB News will be wondering about that 2030 date when the British government has said in law that new petrol and diesel cars will be banned and will be moving to electric vehicles. I'm told by some industry sources we need 4, 5, 10 gigafactories in Britain to make that happen. We've only got one at the moment at Nissan in Sunderland, and we can't get another one off the ground. Is that 2030 deadline going to stick?
I'd hope so, because we do have to think about the planet. It's a bigger issue than just automotive. There are many, many sectors that are going to have to electrify in that time frame. But it's important for the planet that we decarbonise transport. And that by 2030, that 2030 deadline is something we could try and stick to.
And you are connected in government. You've persuaded cabinet ministers in the past to fund research projects here in terms of green industrial technology and electrification. Do you think the government now should move to unlock money regardless of private sector investment coming in or not? Or do you think they should wait until private sector money comes in and then they back that up?
There's a market failure here. There's obviously a market failure here. You need to support the infrastructure to make batteries in this country. You're spending public money though, so you have to be responsible. If there is a market failure like there is, then government should step up and try and help private industry get off the ground.
Professor Matt Ball, the chair of Driving the Electrical Revolution of the University of Newcastle, great to talk to you here today. Well, Tom, this is emerging as a big story since Britishvolt went into administration yesterday. I'm going to be here up in the northeast all day talking to people. The Prime Minister is coming to the region as well. So central is this project, this factory, this town's future in the whole levelling up agenda. Those red wall seats, of course, will determine the result of the next general election. Tom, back to you.
Liam, thank you so much for bringing us that story as it is developing there in Blythe. Really interesting to hear that this site might well be developed after all. Well, there we are. That is Liam Halligan live in Blythe for us. Thank you for watching us here on The Briefing this morning. We're back, of course, every weekday at 9:30. Up next, though, it's Bev Turner today after the weather.
Good morning, Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another cold one out there this morning. Again, ice is a big hazard if you're heading out to the roads. We do still have some sleet and snow falling in places. Low pressure dominating up to the northeast. There is this little low, but that's going to skirt to the south. So we're kind of in the dry zone for much of the UK. Not much rain around, many places just dry and bright, but it is cold. It's in the west where we've seen some showers overnight that things are potentially icy, and still some snow flurries for North Wales, northwest England this morning and parts of Northern Ireland, and certainly to come more snow across northern Scotland as well, although turning more to rain now along the coasts and across the Northern Isles, but certainly over the hills of northern Scotland. Further snow today. Elsewhere, well, most places just dry and cold. Temperatures getting up to 3 or 4 Celsius this afternoon with light winds in the sunny spells. We could get to 5 or 6 in the southwest, a bit more cloud likely here. As we go through the nights, we'll continue to see some wintry showers in the northeast, but even here they start to ease off, and certainly showers further west tending to die away. Could still be a little bit icy though as we head into tomorrow morning, and it could also be foggy. Some thick fog patches likely to form. Freezing fog as well as temperatures yet again drop below freezing, even in towns and cities. Rural spots will be well below on Friday morning. For most Fridays, just another cold but bright and fine sunny day. Just the chance of 1 or 2 showers across parts of the east, northern England, North Wales, and particularly Northern Ireland. Could have some stubborn fog patches that last for most of the day, but say for many it'll just be bright, fine, sunny, cold, but temperatures are just getting up a little higher, closer to average, 3 or 5 degrees across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, 6 or 7 further south. There's that low diving southwards, but weather fronts will try and edge in over the next few days. So it's cold tomorrow, but slowly turning milder, at least in the west, as we go through the weekend. Goodbye.
I'm Camilla Tominey. Join me on GB News on Sunday mornings for a politics show with personality. On TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us.